Hey, what's up, everybody? Johannes Moser here. Welcome back to yet another podcast. Today I'm speaking with Charlotte Lee, who is the president and founder of PRIMO Artists, a phenomenal arts agency operating out of New York City with a truly stellar roster of artists. I've known Charlotte for many, many years. We used to work together when she was still at IMG for a couple of years, and she was absolutely instrumental in creating my North American career together with me. And although we don't work together anymore, I am absolutely thrilled that we were able to keep a very, very nice friendship over the years. And I'm delighted to speak with her today. Charlotte, welcome to the podcast. So wonderful to see you.
Such a pleasure to be here, and my first time being interviewed by an artist and one of my favorite artists. So thank you, Johannes.
There you go. Excellent. Well, thank you. And for all the people that are maybe not in the classical music business, but do follow this podcast, why don't you tell us a little bit what you actually do?
Thank you, Johannes. So basically, I am a talent agent, and in the industry, we say artist manager. But outside the industry, I explain it to people as talent agent because they don't know what we are managing. Artists, fine artists, performing artists. So what we do is represent performing artists. And if you were to say in the mainstream world, we are like the Jerry Maguire of classical musicians. People can understand it that way. And you and I, of course, have had the pleasure of working together for 8 years back when I was at IMG. Yes. And what I do now is at my own company, PRIMO Artists, I manage wonderful artists just like you who work with you and other artists around the world in venues all around the world. And we represent them in all the business aspects of what they do because we want to let them do their artistic craft, and anything that's not on stage or off stage, we just take care of all the administrative aspects of booking their tours, negotiating their record deals, talking about repertoire, and arranging media interviews, overseeing their social media if they need that, and many other business aspects. So that's in a nutshell what we do.
Exactly. And so take us through that process. Like, you have an artist, you have an amazing roster. People should go to your website and check out that roster, which is really stellar. One artist greater than the next. Take us through that process with such known artists. How does it work that you pitch them to an organization, to an orchestra, and to bring them on stage so that they can do what they do?
Yes, great question. The artists that we represent at PRIMO Artists range from a 24-year-old like Songjin Cho, a pianist who won the Chopin competition, to a 75-year-old like Itzhak Perlman. And you may wonder, well, what does Itzhak Perlman need if he's played in all the major concert halls with all the greatest orchestras and maestros over a 60-year career? What he needs is for someone to really understand what it is that he wants, because he always says very publicly, I just want to have fun and do what I love to do. Because if you're 60 years in, maybe it's easy not to have fun and it gets boring. And for him, it's all about dream projects and passion projects that really excite him. And so we could keep doing, the same thing as last time. But what I find is that he's most excited by things that he's not done before. One dream that he has had his whole life is to play with Martha Argerich. And Charlie Dutoit had introduced him to Martha in 1999 and brought him to the Saratoga Performing Arts Center, where Dutoit was music director at the time. And they met, they played together a few sonatas. Frank and Kreutzer and EMI went there, turned on the recording, and there was a nice recording. So that happened. It was one time. And Itzhak said, I dream about this every day, the day that I would return to playing with Martha. And what a dream that would be. And 20 years later, you wonder, is it really going to happen? Martha retired from studio recordings and from coming to America. And so I said, I'm going to make that happen. And so he's done everything and been managed by many other artists, been managed by many other managers. But this was like one thing that we couldn't have happen before. And I said, I'm going to make it happen. And 2 years later, we were in Paris at the Salle Cologne, and what is now EMI, it's called Warner Classics, was there to do a new recording of him playing Bach, and we had it paired with many other works, and it was just a dream come true, really. And so those are the kind of things that we work on. It's all about strategy. What hasn't he done? What more can he do? We wanted to do a movie, and so we went into theaters, 400 theaters around the world and 200 film festivals. We got a Grammy nomination for the best music film for his movie called Itzhak, and playing at Madison Square Garden with Billy Joel, playing at the opening of the Subway Series with the Met and the Mets and the Yankees. And so these are the things that really float his boat. So those conversations versus the conversations about Songjin Cho or Beatrice Rana or some of our other artists that haven't made their debuts yet with Boston or Cleveland or Chicago are completely different. So it's customized for every single artist, depending on where they are, who they are, and how unique every artist is and how their management needs to be personal to them.
Describe that feeling. Like you hear about a dream of an artist that is like an idol to so many people, and describe that feeling when you are at the Salle Playa and you see that dream was able to come to fruition because of you, and you helped to facilitate it. What do you feel in that moment?
I want to cry. I want to cry. And I was sitting inside this Salle, Cologne actually in this case, and Cologne. I really wanted to weep tears of joy, because Martha was not well and she wanted to cancel. And I had told Itzhak, the only way we can make this happen, the only city that we can make it happen is in Paris. We have to come to her. And Perlman just doesn't get on a plane. And so I had to concoct a whole concert tour because, as it goes with record companies, there's no money, and I need to get him over to the other side of the pond with some funding. So I had to concoct this recital tour at the Barbican in London, the Philharmonie de Paris, which unbelievably was going to be a venue that he would make his debut at because it's a new venue, and the Munich Gasteig. So I made up this tour. It all sold out, and at the end of it was this, recording. It seemed like an add-on, but it really was the anchor. And I really wanted to cry because all of it was a dream in the beginning. We didn't know if Martha knew about the internet, and if she had email. So I had written this long letter saying that this was a dream for him to do the Bach fourth keyboard violin sonata, and I sent it through a friend in Brussels who lives in this enclave that she lives in, and it was forwarded to her apparently by email. I didn't know she even had email, and there was no response. I followed up with her manager. I followed up with every single person I knew in her life. There was no response. Then one day we were on tour with Kissin and Maisky, and it was ahead of our Carnegie concert, and I said to Misha, Misha, we so long for the day when we're with Martha. And he said, oh, you mean on the Bach? I said, you know about it? He said, oh, yes. She's looking forward to it. I said, incredible. She read our letter. She even knows the repertoire. He said, oh, yes, very much. So I called Alain Lassaran, the CEO of Warner, and I said, book the studio in Paris. We're coming. And so I just wanted to cry when I was in the studio because I was like, this isn't real. It's not happening. And we had gotten all these film camera people in because at the time we were filming this film, the documentary called Itzhak. And Martha's people said, no, she won't allow it. And I had these film guys on the side. Do they come in? Do they not? She's not feeling well. She wants to cancel the recording. And what are these cameras? And everything was so touch and go. But like we did it anyway. And I just can't believe it. And there's proof of it if you watch the documentary and you buy the EMI CD.
Right.
It's the Schumann Bach recording.
Yeah, and I heard it, and it's
Oh,
fantastic.
thank you
It's
for
it's
listening.
really really amazing. That sounds like you have not just a business interest, but also a really strong emotional investment in what you do, and also in the artists that we represent. Do you find that is key to your work?
Absolutely. Because we don't make money on a lot of these projects, these passion projects, right? I didn't take commission on the Warner deal because, to be honest, there wasn't that much to commission, and it's that's not the point. The point is that we've made this important piece in a discography of two of the greatest artists of our time. And so I am just passionate beyond belief, as you know, Johannes, about the artist. And I could say that I'm passionate about classical music. That's just a fundamental and assumed in what we do. We all are, but I am particularly passionate and motivated by anything that has to do with the artist. That's what I came into the industry for. I started on the CD side promoting product at Universal for the company that oversees the labels of Deutsche Grammophon, Philips, London, Decca, and I found that the promotion side was where I was most interested in and talented in, but I didn't want to represent CDs. I wanted to represent the artists themselves, to be at the center of what goes on in their careers, to have an impact on their careers. So that strategy and being at the center of it and being able to touch and be a part of the geniuses of our field is what rocks my world. So that's where my deep passion is.
So you
Enabling
mentioned.
creators to create and share their creations with as many people in the world as possible.
Now, you are an artist in your own right. You're a violinist. Um,
I
and
wouldn't
I
say
guess,
that. That's a total stretch.
well, I've seen you play
I'm a
for
virtuoso
for your
manager.
son.
I'm definitely not a virtuoso artist in that vein. I'm a well trained non-professional musician, and I'm a professional listener. I'm a professional concert goer. That's what I am. So I had a lot of pedagogical training. That's all I can say.
Do you think it's essential to be a good artist manager, that you have some sort of training in an instrument? Do you know of examples of people that actually came to the business without any sort of musical background?
Peter Gelb,
Oh, that's right.
Ed
You came
Yim.
from the producing side, I guess, right?
Yes, Peter Gelb managed Horowitz without being able to read any of the Chopin that that Horowitz ever played. Peter is a professional amateur music lover, but not a trained musician. Ed Yim, the head of WQXR, our most popular radio station in the United States, he sang in amateur choruses, and he, if you ever have been in his flat, has thousands and thousands of CDs. But as far as the craft itself, or being an instrumentalist or trained musician, those are two prime examples. So yes, you can be a not trained musician to succeed in the business, but you have to, if you were to walk into Peter's apartment too, you would see thousands and thousands of CDs. So you can't not be a music lover and completely knowledgeable about repertoire and artists, but you can be an untrained musician. So it's very rare, though. Why would someone have such a deep love and knowledge of something that they're not trained in? I don't know. But it's possible. But most people in the business are trained musicians. And I think to succeed as an artist manager, you have to have that training or that experience or that knowledge. Otherwise, why are you in this business? because we don't make much money. It's
Right.
grueling. The travel, the hours, all of it is a lifestyle, and it's not a pretty lifestyle. Sitting at post-concert dinner sounds glamorous, but when you have a 6 o'clock flight to get up for, that's what you know well as a concert artist. So it's really tireless, and if you don't have a deep passion and knowledge of the art, either through the craft or through your musical knowledge and interests, I don't know why you would be in this business. But absolutely, in order to succeed, you have to have an understanding of all those things. On the artist management side, I would say if your repertoire knowledge is not strong, it won't hamper your ability to be successful. But you can't be on the programming side working for a presenter like the Met Opera or the New York Philharmonic without being a walking Daniels. You have to know every single Kerschel. You have to know what the difference is between Haydn 104, Haydn 96, and Haydn 72, and why you would put that on a program versus another Haydn symphony. But as an artist manager, you have to understand the artist. And if you're a trained musician, then that helps immensely, because understanding the artist, what they go through, and why you shouldn't send an email to an artist about something sensitive or requires deep, consideration on a concert day. Someone who doesn't understand artists wouldn't be sensitive to that. Timing is crucial with artists. So having an understanding of that is definitely a prerequisite, I think.
So it sounds like you're not only managing artists' careers, but you also have to manage the artist in his or her sensitivities and in sort of the in between. I wonder, and I've been married to an agent myself for a little while, and so I got quite an insight into that world. And it was always astounding to me to see young people that started at, for example, at IMG at a really low entry level monthly earning. And so I was always wondering what drives these people to be so passionate about this job. And there must be an X factor in your profession that makes up for not the million gazillions flowing into into our business. And we're, as we see now in Corona, most institutions are hanging on a shoestring financially and just can make it from season to season. Some are better established, but some are very fragile in that sense. And Corona showed how that works. What do you think that X factor is for a young agent starting out? Or maybe what was the X factor for you?
Well, it was never money. I went through college as a double major in violin performance and liberal arts, and as most liberal arts majors do, they don't know what they want to do with their lives. They typically apply to law school. So in my senior year at the University of Texas at Austin, I applied to law school. I got in, but I just didn't feel a passion about it. And I thought, what I really want to do is not draft memos all day. What I really want to do is go to concerts for free. So I thought that's what I want to do. And I don't know what skills are required for that. I just know that I want to spend my time each day and night going to concerts for free. And so this was my way of exploring the music business that I had stumbled upon after graduation, because back in the 90s, where we didn't have the internet and we didn't have an idea of what professions existed outside being a teacher, lawyer, or a doctor, I knew I didn't want to perform, and I knew I didn't want to teach. And I knew that I didn't want to do anything that took me away from music. So being an entertainment lawyer was my only idea that I could enjoy being close to the music. But I didn't realize until I interned at Volunteer Lawyers for the Arts that it's as far away from the music as possible. I mean, you're not doing anything for the music. And so I thought there has to be another way. And what I want to do is go to concerts all the time. And then I stumbled upon the music business when I interned for Universal and was in the marketing department promoting all these CD releases. And I thought, this is where I need to be. So that's what prompted me to go into the music business. And I started at $32,500 at IMG. And I would venture to say that the starting salary at any company in the agency side is actually not that much more than that 23 years later. And we all just do it because it's a passion where we want to be spending our time. And it's fun. The people in the business are nice. They're not backstabbing, because if they're doing something out of passion and not for money, then you can well expect that people are nice. And actually, a lot of people continue to stay in the business because of those factors: who's in the business, how nice people are, how rewarding it is to sit in an auditorium and hear that all your efforts at a desk resulted in an incredible performance, and we're inspired by what we do each day. So that's really what drives people. And particularly at IMG, we were driven also by the family atmosphere and how wonderful our colleagues, in addition to how wonderful our artists, were. So people make a huge difference in this business.
Yeah. I remember that when I visited the IMG offices, there was always a good vibe, and actually our managers seemed to be excited when an artist actually would come. I saw that also when other artists were visiting, because it meant that it wasn't just all like abstract emails, but actually, to have the interaction with the people, I guess, is what makes all of it.
Yes, you could feel it. It was palpable.
For sure. So, as you mentioned before, we had the pleasure of working many years together, and you have been in the business for quite some time now. And obviously, the world since you started has changed in ways that nobody would have expected at the end of the 90s. I guess the internet was an obscure thing for nerds, and look where we are now. In this changed environment and in this changed world, what do you think has changed for artists? What are you looking for in an artist today that you weren't necessarily looking for in artists 15, 20 years ago?
That's a great question. There have been so many evolutions in how the music business works, how an artist management agency can look and function, but most of all in what artists are and how they can succeed in the 21st century. Back in the 70s, someone who's a 42-year-old like Richard Good or Lisa De La Rocha, who were completely unknown, could have a career out of the blue. As a 42-year-old now, there's no instrumentalist or singer, and I would venture to say maybe conductor, they tend to be on the older side, that would have a chance of succeeding if they weren't already in the business for 15 to 20 years. And that's just the reality. You start a lot younger in the business these days, and everything is all inclusive, all encompassing, and all as a whole. Alicia De La Rocha and Richard Good never had a big media presence visually. They didn't have a compelling look. And nowadays you look and you see what an emphasis there is on the visual package. And it's not that that is a foundation, because the foundation always needs to be artistry, virtuosity, mastery, and technical prowess. And of course, something to say, that goes without a doubt, but you have to have the look. And that's just one of the elements. Secondly, you have to be able to be media savvy and to be able to communicate. And back in the day, there were just not that many media opportunities, and it was always earned media. What we say in the business, earned media, is an invitation from a publication to be featured through an interview with you. These days, it's It's owned media. It's like your own media. You're creating it, and you're a master at this, Johannes, because you are so active and one of the top social media creators in the business, where you're churning out all this new original material, whether it's YouTube or Facebook Lives of you practicing, or Instagram. So artists are taking into their own hands media because of the constriction of traditional media. You can't rely on publications who are falling by the wayside. This music critic retires, they won't be replaced. That concert isn't going to be covered because there's just not enough real estate in newspapers anymore. Newspapers are reinventing as well. So you have to take it into your own hands. And if you're an artist who is innovative and takes the initiative to really get the messaging about themselves out there through their social media channels, then you will be able to fill that requirement now, which is a total prerequisite. Being a successful artist in the 21st century requires that. So when you look at someone like Itzhak Perlman, who's the only artist who's living who really straddles the 20th and 21st centuries, who has mastered that, we love Pinky, we love Manny, and we love FEMA, but really when you look, there's no social media presence on them. Itzhak Perlman is the only one who straddles both centuries, who is relevant to artist lovers, music lovers who are 13 and 73. And he gets that. As a 75-year-old, why should he have Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and do all these lives? We were the first ones in the business in 2015 to do a Facebook Live. And the only Facebook Lives that were happening were in the rock and pop world. And that's who I look at as a model. I don't look inside the classical world. I always look outside, what's happening outside. And I said to Itzhak backstage at Ravinia, I said, we're going live on Facebook. He's like, what's that? I said, let's just do it. He said, great. And then after that, artists started getting into the bandwagon of Facebook Live, Instagram Live. So he's got 600,000 followers. And he knows that they're hungry for material, which is why, in the absence of anyone saying anything, from March 12th to April 5th, he said, I'm going to break the silence. It's enough. We need comfort, we need entertainment, we need healing. It's enough. This pandemic is depressing. I want to do jokes. I want to do heartwarming things. And so he started filming these videos on his platforms to lift up the spirit, to take the lead, to push us back into coming back into the public, following this moratorium of social media. No one wanted to say anything for 3 weeks. It was like, oh my God, people are dying. We don't know, is it inappropriate to do something on social media? So he knows the power and the relevance that he needs to have through speaking out through social media. So it's absolutely essential. And so on top of the visual element and then the social media element and the media savviness, I think you really have to be creative in your programs, because you can't rely on bread and butter Schubert programs anymore. And you have to be innovating. You have to be creating new music. You have to know your composers. Johannes, you're one of the leaders in the industry of artists who are commissioning actively, who have relationships with composers. And we can't just be playing up to Prokofiev and Shostakovich. We have to be playing living composers, and not just from the last 50 years, like today, right? So expanding the canon with new work and also new collaborations. And you can cross genres, you can cross, all sorts of different things. You have to be innovative in your programs, because otherwise no one wants to have a recital of just the Kreutzer Sonata and Schumann and Franck. They want interesting stuff, and I know it may be uncomfortable for the artist and uncomfortable for the audience, but it's just our duty to be able to step into that. And you can't expect an artist manager or presenter to bring those ideas forward if you aren't taking the initiative and don't have the creative ideas and the intelligence and the wherewithal. You won't be standing out in the industry. Lastly, and this has always been the case, you have to be professional. You have to be quick to respond to professionals who write you. And I know young artists who have lost Strads and Guananinis because they didn't respond to emails. And if you don't know the answer, it's okay. Just say, like, thank you so much. I'm so overwhelmed. I don't know what my, instrument loan deal will allow me to take it. I'm just, thank you. Let me get back to you. And you can't let an email sit for 3 days. That's just not going to work. And we find time and time again, the artists who succeed in the industry are savvy, are quick, are communicative, are creative, are on top of it, and they just get it. So I would say that that's definitely something that most artists don't really think about. Organization, email responsiveness, the ability to write cohesively, and the quickness with what you have to respond with. And they don't realize enough that they are the CEOs of their own companies. And you think, oh, I'm just a freelance musician. No, you're not. You're the CEO of your brand. And guess who's creating that brand and who's refining that brand? Who is the head of communications and marketing and PR and imaging and all of that, on top of artists and repertoire and diplomacy, relations, all those things. Artists are the CEOs, CFOs, COOs, CMOs, CIOs, CTOs of their brand. You know that. and so these conservatories need to be able to level up and evolve their curriculum. And some of them are very quickly doing that. San Francisco Conservatory of Music and Juilliard and Curtis, they understand that their curriculum needs to include entrepreneurship, social media, being able to cut a video, and being able to produce, edit, and use iMovie and Garage and all these apps. It's just absolutely crucial. So awareness and intention is the first step to being able to move into all those elements of mastery.
Right. Do you know of careers that maybe have started on social media and then sort of trickled into the real world?
Yes.
Or is it, and how do you see that? I mean, is something like that, is that a solid foundation? Do you find nowadays that's what you can build a career on?
I think that when the traditional avenues are closed, and you have the avenue of social media, there's nothing to be ashamed about. It's not a reliable way of getting success as a performer, but it is something that can't be ignored. We run a Clubhouse series where we host daily conversations on relevant topics in the music business, and 3 weeks ago I had Esther Abrami on to our show, and she has over 500,000 social media followers across her platforms, and she just 4 years ago was a student at the Royal Academy of Music in London with no idea that she was going to make it. And she decided one day, against the advice of her teacher, to start an Instagram channel and to do a video a day, practicing whatever, pictures of her cat, who cares, whatever. People took to it, and now she has just inked an exclusive recording contract with Sony Classical in January 2021. So she's the one who gets to enjoy it when there were all these naysayers. And maybe one could say, well, her playing versus Janine Jansen's, there's no comparison. Well, so what? She has her own audience, and anyone who books her knows that they can sell out the concert, because with one click on her social media, she's gotten to over 500,000. And if each venue is only 2,000 seats, well, do the math. She could sell it out herself. So it matters. It's not everything, but it's an avenue when doors can be closed.
Right. Yeah, I always wonder about the sustainability about, careers that have started digitally and then move into the real world. But then again, there are, let's say, analog careers that are very short-lived as well. So I guess there is no real pattern there.
I think that the proof is in the pudding, right? So debuts are not very hard to get, but re-engagements are everything. In this business, it's all about getting re-engaged, and you can't get re-engaged unless you really prove your worth. which is on stage, showtime. So have you brought everything to it? Are you a solid performer? And is it a compelling performance? And if you check all that off, typically you would get a re-engagement. If something's gone wrong, or if you screwed something up, I don't know, decided to say no to a post-concert dinner, or left the hall without saying goodbye to the conductor, or had a huge memory slip, you might not get re-invited, right? And so if you have a really healthy re-engagement rate, it doesn't really matter how you got your debut. I manage Nicola Benedetti. We've been together for 15 years since I signed her in 2015 after she won the BBC Young Musician of the Year award. And so many people said, she's too pretty a face to be able to play the violin. And so it was the bane of her existence, her face. And so basically we just had to go at it and kept on doing what we did, and did it and did it and did it, and time after time after time again she would continue to get re-engaged. And now it's been 15 years. So I think the business has accepted that she can actually play the violin and has something to say, and she does it fairly well. And so I think you just have to block out the noise and say, you know what, it doesn't matter whether I got the engagement through a conductor or through another connection or through my social media. I'm here to play as well as I can, and that is all that matters, because that really is the only driving factor that will prompt an organization or an orchestra and conductor to bring you back again. That's what it's all about in the end.
Right. When I used to visit the IMG offices when you were still there, I would come in and I would look at your desk and I would see piles and piles and piles of packages with CDs of young artists, middle-aged artists, old artists trying to get signed. And if I remember correctly, probably the success rate of those, let's say, applications was relatively slim. If I understand correctly, what gets you to management and to a contract really is a recommendation. Has that changed at all? Are you scouting artists at all? Are you just going by recommendation? How does it work?
Well, I'm one of the nice people in the business who actually opens all the packages and reviews all the materials and actually writes artists back. And for anyone listening to this, if you write PRIMO, you will get a response. Unfortunately, the response is always no, but I always felt that it's the most respectful to actually respond. So the answer is always no, and anyone who solicits us with a, dear sirs or madams is always going to get the same answer. Anyone we sign, as you alluded to, and you know well, Johannes, is going to be someone that we've heard about through the grapevine, through a record company, through a orchestra, through a conductor, or through one of our instrumentalists. And they'll say, have you heard this cellist? Or one of my conductors, Christian Metchelaru, who's music director of the WDR Symphony Orchestra and the Orchestre Nationale de France, said, you need to listen to this pianist who just came to WDR Charlotte. He is the next Kissin. And so that's how we hear about things, through people on the ground who are on stage or bringing artists to the stage. With regard to whether it can work, yes, it can work. Sometimes it does work. Maybe not with me, but with other people. Yesterday, we had a panel session on Clubhouse of 3 vocal managers, Alex Fletcher, Anna de Archuleta, and Justin Werner. And we brought to the stage a guest, and his name is Limmy Pulliam, Limmie Pulliam. His nickname in the business is the Black Pavarotti. He's this large tenor who's black. And he has an incredible instrument. And he didn't have the avenue open for him of competition wins or money or any of this. And all he had was youtube.com. So he put a few recordings up there, and he wrote to Alex Fletcher, and he said, please listen to my music and let me know if you would consider signing me. And Alex listened to it, fell off his chair at the instrument that he heard, and why hadn't he heard about him, and why is he not managed? Because he didn't have the opportunity. He didn't have the access, he didn't have the contacts, and he signed him. And now he's off to a great career. So it's encouragement that if you don't have the connections or the in, but you have a great talent, then sure, write managements, write competitions, get in, because someone will notice you. And that's the same thing with models or any other type of creators. If you don't go after it and you just stand there, and you hear all those stories, someone walked up to me in the grocery shop and he was a talent agent. He said, I'm going to do, some introductions to get you a photo shoot. You need to be a model. And that's just how careers start. People will find you if you're that talented. So don't be discouraged just because you get a no from PRIMO artists, but you will get a response either way.
There you go. Well, I think as we alluded to in this podcast for quite a few times now, is that it's really a people's business. Yeah, I mean, it's really about relationships. It's really about who you know. It's really about maintaining relationships. We're all homebound at the moment. How is it possible to maintain relationships when we're all grounded, when we're all stuck in our home office? And maybe once we get out of the pandemic, how much of a travel budget we will all have, who knows? How will it be possible to maintain those relationships, in your opinion?
It's a good question. Obviously, we've had a lot of challenges through COVID, but the one thing is that we're all at home. And whereas most intendants and busy people in our business might never be at their desk, the one thing we could rely on was that people were available. And they were in the office and they were able to accept a call or a Zoom meeting. And it was a wonderful way to catch up with people. How are you doing? And what's going on? What are you guys, how are you getting through this? Just really asking them as a human being how they're doing, how their institution is faring, and also, if we can help in any way. We've arranged so many virtual appearances. Perlman, Joshua Bell, Wynton Marsalis. So many of our artists have dedicated and donated so much time to fundraising efforts for these presenting organizations. And we would never dare to ask for or take a fee for it because we're part of an ecosystem that needs to be healthy. And what's $500? Why are they going to give us $500 for what? They have a $250,000 fundraiser. They can keep the money and use it to become healthy so that they can bring us back later for a gala or whatever it is. But with regard to those in our business, it was a wonderful opportunity to just say, hey, let's do a Zoom meeting because I know you're available. So let's meet here, let's talk. And we actually got to see a lot of people that we've never seen. So now anytime we have a conversation with the New Zealand Symphony, Hong Kong Philharmonic, or last week I talked to the Bern Symphony, I've never been able to have an opportunity to see them in person, and we could see each other now because of this Zoom culture we have. So people are much more open to video meetings now, and we don't have to jump on a plane to meet someone in person anymore. We used to, jump on a plane to meet someone in Chicago or Cleveland or San Francisco, and now we can just Zoom. We will still be traveling when we are permitted to do so. We are still going to be at important events. But to sign a contract for a record deal, it's not as important anymore to be in person, we find, and people are being more pragmatic and frugal because these are the times that we're in. So they're very understanding if we can't be somewhere.
Right. Well, I mean, since you asked people how they're doing, how are people doing actually, in your opinion, from the music business side?
I think people are doing fairly well. I think that the pandemic allowed us to peel away any kind of sheen of perfection and life that was not really as perfect as it seemed. So there's always this, Facebook kind of, Instagram kind of fake life, right? And so you think like, oh, they're doing so well. But actually, I think it was quite refreshing in the pandemic for people to say, I lost my job, or, I have mental health issues, or I was discriminated against. And this has been a coming out year, these past 14 months of talking about things that aren't perfect. And I personally, because I've always run PRIMO since we started in 2015 as a remote business, I never wanted to put in the money to invest in rent. I wanted to invest it in being out on the road because that's how I like to do my business in person. And I always tried to hide the fact that I had children at home. Some people didn't even know that I have a family. Of course, you you met Jacob when he was born in the hospital, Johannes.
Yes,
So you've seen
indeed.
a different aspect of me. You've been over our house for barbecues, but most people don't see children and my husband running around in the back of my Zooms. I'd be like, you have to be quiet and not exist. And the Zoom culture and the pandemic, when you see Stephen Colbert running around his, after his cat in the late night show, you're like, it's okay to be a human being and to have people living in the house. It's okay to show my bedroom and for people to see that I am less than perfect. So it took off this sheen where we could be real. We could talk about lost jobs and we could say, we're broke. We have no money, right? And so for agencies, it was something that we could just deal with right on and be like, you know what? Yeah. We're based on 100% commission. 100% of our performances have been canceled, and we have no money coming in, and it's nothing to be shy of. So it led us to quickly take action and mobilize into doing something about it. And there were some, like our dear friend Jasper Parrott and others, who said, presenters need to pay cancellation fees to get us through. I'm like, no, they don't. Because actually, I don't want $500 now. I want $50,000 for a gala later. Right. I don't want to burden presenters who are barely surviving. To give me $500 is not going to carry my business. It's not going to help my artist. We had Joshua Bell go all the way up to the Berkshires to play this live tape Tanglewood recording for the Tanglewood, series last year, the digital series. And I didn't commission it. Why? Because Josh made pennies off of that. And so the point is, we needed to find a way to return to financial health for our organizations without burdening each other, because each other were going through the same thing. That's what mobilized me to start the PAMAC movement, or the Performing Arts Managers and Agents Coalition that I started. You can find information about us at artsrelief.org. And we don't just represent all the artists and artist managers and agents in the business. We work for the whole ecosystem. There was no coalition that existed to represent the for-profit side or all the sides equitably. There was just nonprofit. And so I thought, let's advocate together. So we did our change.org/arts relief petition. And thank you, Johannes, so much. It meant so much to me that you shared it on your social media channels.
Oh, that was a no-brainer, of course.
Thank you. And so we got nearly 18,000 signatures. It went straight to Congress. They saw it. We wrote thousands of letters as from our coalition. We called. We are the only group in the entertainment business that set up a call and had a live, real call with Senator McConnell's senior staff. We're talking about the most powerful person in Congress, the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, and the Americans for the Arts, NIVA, the National Independent Venue Association, the lead coalition. No one could get a call. And our partners at Americans for the Arts said, Charlotte, we need you to get to McConnell because we've gotten to every other politician and he's the one who's going to really turn this around. I said, why are you asking me? They're like, because we're out of options and no one's been able to do it. And I said, I'll do it. And the way I did it was the only thing I know, which is to get famous artists on board. So I just got the three most famous musicians in Kentucky because McConnell is from Kentucky. And really, even though he was the Senate Majority Leader, he's responsible not for Americans per se. That's what the other, 49 states are. He's responsible for Kentucky. He still really is the Kentucky senator. So I said, I'm going to get the three most famous musicians in Kentucky, and he's going to have this call with us because the only way you can get to politicians is if you donate 9 digits or more, or you're a famous person. So we got Sturgill Simpson, the most famous country musician in Kentucky. We got My Morning Jacket, the big band, and we got Teddy Abrams, the music director and conductor of the Louisville Orchestra. And so we got on the phone with them and they said, how may we help you? And we said, we're in desperate need and we're not going to be back for 24 months because we're the first to shut down and the last to open. They said, we had no idea. We thought you were coming back in January. We gave you our 8-week PPP loans and clearly that's not enough. How can we help you? Can we give you these low interest loans that won't mature for 20 years? And we said, keep your loans, keep your money. We can't stack on more debt. We will not be here in 20 months. get behind the Save Our Stages bill that's been written. And so within 3 weeks, Schumer, everyone came on board. We got it passed on the 20th of December. It was signed by the president on the 27th of December. And this past Monday, on the 26th of April, the $16 billion portal was open. And it is the only bill that landed on the floor of Congress, the only bill for the music industry that was passed. And the congressmen and women quickly realized that this is not just about music. Let's expand it from the 10 billion we asked for to 16.25 billion to cover all culture. So fine arts, zoos, museums, movie theaters. So $16.25 billion bailout, not just for venues like the UK and German bailouts. This is for talent representatives, for promoters, for producers, for theatrical producers, and for live venues. And that's huge. So we know that when we are working together, we are stronger, and that was the only way that we could survive the pandemic. So when we asked, how are you doing? It was just like, I'm doing okay mentally, but if we don't get money by May 1st, 2022, because we have 8 months of reserves, we are out of business. And for the ones who weren't as lucky and only had 2 months of reserves, like CAMI, Columbia Artist Management Incorporated, the biggest, longest running agency in the business, 90 years old. They died on August 31st, 2020.
Legendary business.
The legendary who managed all the great singers at the Met and the conductors. And they closed their doors on August 31st, 2020. And so we were really lucky that we could last this long. We will all be funded in May 2021. And we're just so grateful that the government leaders heard our cry, and that we know if there's one thing, what we do as trained musicians and artists is to work together. We know how to play in orchestras. So we worked tutti together in ensemble to make a lot of noise, which is another thing we know how to do, to really get rescued. And that really has made all the difference in the American music industry, so that we can continue doing what we do to get live music going again. There's no comparison to it. No more Spotify's and live streams and poorly filtered audio to listen to. We just want to be back in concert halls again and be in a community listening, because that is what it's all about.
Right. And I mean, I'm so incredibly amazed what you've done there. I mean, it's absolutely, it takes a person like you, Charlotte, a powerhouse like you, to just do it.
Thank you, Johannes.
To just do it.
I'm only
really,
as
incredible.
good as those around me and my contacts, and you were really, really one of them. The artists that I called on, who took no time to hesitate to say, tell me what I need to post. How can I make a difference? That really made the biggest difference, because this was never going to work if our petition had 223 signatures. I said, we need to do this petition and we need to get 5 digits. And yes, I'd like to break 10, but I'd really like to break 15. And that's what we did. So thank you so much, Johannes. It really took a whole village to save our ecosystem. And we look forward to having you back in America. I still remember all the debuts. Obviously, your Chicago Symphony debut, your Cleveland Orchestra debut, your Boston Symphony debut. I remember that audition that we had set up for you with the Boston Symphony. And I remember your Carnegie debut and all of these special moments. And we just so can't wait to have you come back to America and experience live performances again.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I really hope for that. That's going to happen very soon. One of the things we did prior to this interview, and I know you have to go to your next meeting, so I just want to ask this real quickly. I made a little survey, and people were really excited about this podcast, and I asked them for questions. So if you don't mind, we have a couple of quick fire questions.
I'm honored.
Coming from our dear friends from Instagram and from Facebook. And we got a comment from Jihei Chang Piano, and she says, I'm so excited about this podcast. My questions are, Do you see a lot of changes regarding streamed and ticketed concerts from COVID continuing into the future, which I think is a really interesting point? And second question is, with the limit and uncertainty with traveling, again, due to COVID, do you think classical music scenes will be more localized, focusing on more local talents? And I think those are two excellent questions. So maybe, first of all, these streamed concerts, what do you think? Is that going to
Yes,
last?
excellent question. Thank you. I think that streams are here to stay. I think that the leaders in our industry, like the Berlin Philharmonic and the Detroit Symphony, who 15 years ago already had live webcasting as part of their series on a regular basis, already saw something that was the future. I think the rest of the organizations only got on board because of the discomfort that the pandemic put them in. And it was a good way of just moving into the inevitable, which is consumers would like the option of being able to experience a performance either live or from the comfort of their own home. And that's not to say that people are lazy. It's just that we have a global audience now. So the Detroit Symphony, they can get typically 5,000, 6,000 maybe tuning into a live cast, and most of them are not in Michigan. Most of them are global. And so that's just the way things go when you have the internet, because it doesn't have to be local. So I think it is here to stay. And I am seeing a trend in the contracts and the conversations with our presenters saying, would your artist be agreeable to letting this be live streamed? And no, they're not going to get paid for it. And we are going to offer this for a nominal fee. And that's just going to be how we can help to fund and cover paying a proper fee for this artist, because of all the losses and all the limited capacity that they're going to have in the 21-22 season until they can get back to full capacity. So it's just going to be part of these engagements moving forward. On the second question, I think that what was the question? It was about...
Sorry, do you think people focus more on local talent
yes.
With the restrictions of travel, which I think is very interesting?
Yes, that's a good question. I think that the pandemic proved that we needed to rely on local artists. So anyone who couldn't travel to another country couldn't play there. And so German orchestras were bringing German artists. Nicola Benedetti could not play in Spain. So they brought a Spanish violinist in place of her because they weren't allowing anyone from the UK to come into Spain. And in America, a lot of the artists that are being booked by orchestras and venues here are American or based in America. And so I think that during the pandemic, it's been very useful. I think that past the pandemic, when the borders open, it's probably going to not be something that presenters rely on as much because they can have the access to bringing artists internationally. Some organizations like to favor bringing artists that don't require visas just because they don't want to deal with visas. But for the most part, we're talking about, cosmopolitan, really forward-thinking metropolitan cities and organizations are always going to bring artists from all over the world, for sure.
Well, I think what is going to play into the decision-making also is once we are over COVID, of course, we have to probably face a much bigger crisis, which is the environmental crisis. And of course, that begs the question, can we just go for one rehearsal to Tokyo and then return to New York City? But I guess that is a broader conversation. Yes. Do you still have time for one more quick question?
Yes, with pleasure, Johannes.
Fantastic. So we have a question from Suzuki Cello Studio, which are great friends of my social media, and I also know them in person.
Oh, wonderful.
So I wanted to pass this on to you. I would like to know if it is a coincidence, although I don't think so, but in the classical music industry, I see much more opportunities for males rather than females. Is that something that you experience as well? Or
I just have to laugh. I have to laugh because your friend, my client, the German conductor Christian Reif, white 6'4" male, certainly doesn't feel that way. And I can tell you that the tables have turned as of 2020, being a person of color, being a woman, being anything but a white man, as you can appreciate, Johannes, is a wonderful thing. There are opportunities that are plentiful, that are being given, sometimes not based on merit, I have to say, which doesn't feel fair to a white male conductor or instrumentalist. Other times based on merit, and keeping in mind all of the priorities of having artists and composers of diversity being presented. And that is just something that's never going to go away. So it's a wonderful trend that is important and overdue. And I think that for those like you, Johannes, or like my conductor, Christian Metchelaru, who's also white and male, you guys are all very lucky that you established your careers before this change happened. For any white male starting their career now, it's become extremely difficult. And organizations are not shy in saying, you know what, I just don't have the spots open for anyone who's not BIPOC artist, right?
Interesting.
So BIPOC is BIPOC, Black Indigenous people of color. So that's a priority, and there's definitely not going to be a predominance of males. When you look at instrumentalists, there never has been in recent years. There are so many female instrumentalists, particularly string players, particularly violinists, and there's an increasingly great number of cellists and of pianists. And now of conductors, and singers has always been very female heavy. In fact, all the sopranos out there. So definitely, it's going to even out or be predominantly female and BIPOC. So you're going to see that change for sure. So what a pleasure to speak with you, Johannes.
And with you, Charlotte. Thank you so much, and see you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.